Get ready for Tagged Beyond the Award, a podcast produced by the Aebli Group.
Improved on?
Are you talking about for the entries that we
Yeah,
saw?
yeah.
Yeah, I think obviously when you look at these and you get sort of a large amount of very technical and very state of the art projects that you're looking at judging, visuals for me at least come first and foremost. So clean videos, pictures, 1,000 words, really kind of depicting that would have helped some of the process along. But otherwise, I think they were done fairly well.
I would say the biggest thing would be branding. There were some entries that didn't really have the cohesive branding that I would have liked to seen, and this is indicative of the industry as a whole, more so on the pharmaceutical side rather, but you need to have images, logos, and names that can really resonate with the user, because that's what we're moving toward now. You know, as we take more ownership, as patients take more ownership of their health. So just stronger branding.
Well, you say that, the patients are taking more ownership of their health. There's a lot of focus on user-centered design, the approach of human factors. Tor, you've spent your whole career doing that. What excites you most about the product development that you're seeing today? Not necessarily with just our winners, but as a whole.
No, I mean, everybody talks about AI, and I'm probably more intrigued with the augmented reality aspect of it and how robotics, diagnostics was really going to be improved with the combination of AI and AR. I mean, imagine spinal surgery now with mapping in MRIs, CT, visuals with guided surgery assist, right? Diagnostics for cancer where you're not just waiting for one personal recommendation whether or not that spot is a certain centimeters larger than it should be, but it's proven through a assisted approach. Even personal vaccines or personal medicines going to become that much more personalized as it comes forward. So I think all the technologies of these startups that we're going to see are going to be utilizing these technologies to create products that we've never really seen before.
Yeah. There's so much area of opportunity. You want to?
Yeah, I was going to add on that it's good to see something with human factors in mind. It's good to see that it's a strong impetus. And I remember years ago, I was working for Thomson Reuters, writing for a brand called Medical Device Daily. And we got a chance to test run Google Glass. How many people in here have ever heard of Google Glass or have ever used Google Glass? Awesome idea, but the execution was horrible because you had to look in the bottom. I think it was the left eye, but you had to literally look down to see the interface, and it caused me to have a headache after I used it. And it was clearly a good idea, but the execution was terrible. And that's kind of where I see the technology that was represented here, how it's leaps and bounds above what we saw with Google Glass. It's not only, these technologies not only are good ideas, but the execution is made for the patient or for the user. Google Glass, not so much, but yeah, I wonder if we still use that, by the way, if there's any.
I don't think so. That was sunset, I
But
believe.
Omar brings up a really good point
Yeah.
that I think the sophistication of the awards that we saw on how they handled human factors, design, and integrated even the user interfaces was so much more professional and thought through than in certain previous categories.
All right, so looking at it from another perspective, what's overrated? What are we overhyped? What isn't delivering?
A clear definition for artificial intelligence, for AI. We need to narrow the focus and the scope of that and really explain what we mean by AI and artificial intelligence. Because I think some people use it just like some companies use digital health, for example. They use it, but it's too broad. I think
The Internet of Things.
Yeah, what is that actually? Yeah. So I think AI is just a really broad topic that's overhyped. And whenever I see an AI solution, I groan. I'm like, is this really AI? Is this machine learning? But I didn't see too much of that with these submissions. So
I think at this point it's almost an expectation. I mean, there's been logarithms and machine learning that's been going on in this space for years. We were talking to somebody, before the show and discussing, is that, they were talking about financing it. And I said, if you're just thinking that that's new today, then you guys are way behind.
yeah.
I mean, I think there's a challenge of keeping on the, what's that phrase? Keeping up with your neighbors, right? I mean,
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, the Joneses. So it's there's super AI coming around the corner, which is even going to minimize AI. So to your point, it's overused, but it's ubiquitous to what products are going to be.
So what are you most excited about over the next 3 to 5 years, the two of you? No worry, right on the spot.
Yeah,
It's recorded, it's live, people are seeing this.
Oh, yeah.
I'll take a shot at that.
Go ahead.
So again, I've mentioned it before, but I mean, we've worked on projects with digital pathology where they touted this, 80-year-old woman being the best, diagnosis for, looking at slides, and machine learning couldn't replicate it. Well, now it can, right? So now you're going to have that sort of mass, the ability for diagnostics to really assist physicians or clinicians, not necessarily replace. Same with the surgery, where they're going to be able to assist for better outcomes. And to some of the awards that we saw earlier, as people are getting older like myself, eventually you're going to be maybe lacking a companion, have a robot around won't hurt, right? So, there's an ability to
Way to take it
foster
weird.
mental health, increase the odds for mental health care because you have more personal ability, because you have more opportunities to get into the channels. So there's just so many opportunities.
For me, I think it would be continuous glucose monitors. I think the CGMs are really at the focal point of where MedTech is going. And I think you have several trends that are all combining into one. Digital health, wearables, and just the ability for a patient or a consumer or a user to monitor their stats in real time. So just seeing what continuous glucose monitors are doing now, it's going to go beyond diabetes. It's going to go beyond that. And now you have Dexcom and you have Abbott Laboratories selling over-the-counter CGMs. This holds a lot of promise because I think this is the template for where medical devices are going. And I think the ultimate endpoint is patients, consumers taking ownership of their health.
Thinking about that ownership, Tor, you advise companies often about their design and, where they should start. When you're looking at, the next 3 to 5 years, right, we're talking about trends that are coming up. Now you're doing a lot of consulting. How do you help them prioritize, or where do you help them, prioritize to get their product off of the back of the napkin to, design and then to manufacturability?
I think it really depends on where that product or where that company is in its life cycle to commercialization. There are a fair amount of companies that come in at the very beginning where they have a design and a patent, and they haven't done their risk analysis. So I think the earlier presentation, talked about product development and sort of the 7 steps through a proper process. You have to sort of evaluate where they are. You have to understand where their finances are, and you have to basically help them, guide them into partial or kind of compartmentalizing their overall project into financeable deliverables, right? Because so many medtech companies don't make it because they overshoot, or they try to do too much with too little. So it's really important to take that close look at the user research, user needs, couple it with the technology and how I guess formidable the problem is, and then make sure that you get to a certain stage along the way.
At what point, Omar, are you, from your perspective, are you taking them seriously, or where do they become credible, even newsworthy new devices from your perspective?
So we get a lot of pitches. We get a lot of press releases that talk about companies that are raising funding or that have FDA clearance or approval or a PMA. That's all well and good. But one of the things that we try to focus on and that separates the strong from the weak, I'll say, is reimbursement. And for the companies that are really making it, they're already talking about reimbursement. It's good to get a clearance, 510K, but you got to have somebody to pay for that thing. And if I don't hear anything about reimbursement or anything about payers, just I've got this cool technology, and you'll find that happens oftentimes on the tech side when you have people from the tech world that come into MedTech that develop devices or novel solutions. They think that the biggest hurdle is FDA. Well, no, that's part of it. You also have to be able to get someone to pay for your technology. So, to answer your question, if they're talking about reimbursement up front, yes.
Totally agree on that one.
Yeah, you want to keep going with the reimbursement?
Well, I mean, I've just seen it.
Yeah.
You see that where people get very excited about the project. They understand the clinical needs. They go through all that, and you ask the basic question of what's the billable reimbursement, and they look at you cross-eyed.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that's an important part of this whole process. So we actually uncover that in what I think is called contextual inquiry, where you'll go in and you'll actually kind of understand how the process works. You look at the competition, and you'll understand the where you need to be from a cost perspective, and what's your value add. Yeah.
Thinking about that, what would you give folks advice on? What would be something that, if they're starting out, they're looking to make an impact, what sort of advice would you give them?
An idea. These days, I think the challenge is that you need a bigger team to really bring a product to market, and I don't see a lot of independent inventors coming through the waters. They have to really create a larger team. So.
Well, otherwise they miss steps, right? And they, only one man can only do so much.
Well, it's just so much more of a complex problem right now. It's not like even in human factors, it used to be, the usability of a device, but now it's the usability of a device in a system.
Yep.
So you have to really look at it from a wider point of view. So it takes more resources to get to that answer.
One of our contributing writers, Dr. Kate Stevenson, she's part of Dyad Engineering, and she does a lot of consultant work for the MedTech industry. So she asked the question: Are you going to be a contract manufacturer? Are you going to be a manufacturing company, or are you just an entrepreneur? And she said you need to start thinking about those things, because yes, you can come up with the idea. Yes, you can develop your device, but how are you going to make it? How are you going to get it out there? How is it going to be built? And you need to answer these questions early on. And to your point, there are just so many different things. It's not as simple as having a cool idea in your garage. The story we used to hear in the early millennium. You hear a cool idea, you've got this idea, and you put it together, you get a team, and you get some angels to front you to finance you, and boom, you're off to the FDA. No, it's so many different things now. It's so complex. And you need that larger build out. You need someone in regulatory. You need someone that can run the company, because are you a researcher or are you a CEO? Those are two different things. And sometimes when those worlds collide, it ain't pretty. So, I think that it's just a myriad of different things that entrepreneurs in medtech companies and startups have to consider before they even start up.
I would totally agree with that, because you see the successful companies and the CEOs of those successful companies, not all the time are the ones that are the inventors, right? So the inventor that actually can make it has to have that understanding that they can't solve the world on their own. They have to reach out to the experts. And I mean, to get to your point about funding, it's kind of a catch-22 because all the investors, when they come to get to seed funding, they want to understand that how you're going to launch your company as a company. They don't really want to hear licensing strategies of how you're going to license it. But I would say 90% of the companies end up licensing. So it's kind of one of those you have to balance and juggle that I'm going to make it on my own, but most of the times they spin off into...
I mean, not that you guys are all doom and gloom, but how do companies make it then?
1 out of 50? Yeah, I mean, no, it's getting tougher and tougher. It used to be 1 out of 20. I think to see how innovative startups can really succeed, I think it is becoming more challenging. Obviously, money's not as free as it was a few years ago, so raising capital is a lot harder. I don't want to be doom and gloom, but
winning awards.
So there we go. Yeah. So actually, good segue. I mean, this is a perfect free marketing exercise if people want to really elevate their product to a higher, visibility. And I've seen that, with the companies that we used to work with, that's how we pitched getting the awards. Part of it was to give, thanks to all the people on the team.
Yeah.
But the other part was to get that visibility for that startup, to get that front cover on MD+M, or MDI magazine.
Yeah, I think that award shows or awards programs like this only help. It gets the word out about a company's story. And I couldn't agree more. I'll say less in this instance.
Well, that's not... For the next question
we need less doom and gloom. So
there you go.
Yeah, you're supposed to be our sunshine, Omar.
Tell that to my wife, yeah.
All right, guys, I'll leave you with this. One word for, healthcare innovation.
Dynamic.
Ever-changing. Well, that's more than one word. Hey.
And this coming from the editor. Guys, I really appreciate you being here. I know, it was favors to me, and it really meant a lot. It meant a lot to our team and the winners for sure, to be able to hear your perspectives, give your feedback. The winners will actually be getting some feedback later this week or next week on their nominations and those things that you shared. So this is really great. Thank you for doing this with me.